Hello friends, this video on Ecosystem Part 9 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So now we are going to talk about the process of decomposition. So I already discussed that decomposition is the simple process where complex organic matter gets broken down into simpler forms. Now, as simple the definition looks, the process is not exactly that simple. It involves quite a few steps, and here we are going to look at the process of decomposition stepwise. So it is a 4-step process, and the 4 important steps involved in the process of decomposition are fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, and humification and mineralization. So these are the 4 steps which are involved in the process of decomposition. So now we will spend some time to understand what happens in each of these steps. So first we will start with the first step, that is fragmentation. Now what is the meaning of fragmentation? Fragmentation is derived from the word fragments. So generally the term fragmentation would mean dividing something into small pieces or small fragments. So that is what fragmentation means. So let us see what does it mean in terms of decomposition. So here the detritus is broken down into simpler particles. So as I said, fragments, breaking down into fragments. So the detritus, that is the dead plant or the dead animal remains. So they are broken down into comparatively simpler particles. So how exactly that happens? Who breaks it down? So let us try to see that. So organisms which help in fragmentation are called detritivores. So it is derived from detritus, so detritivores. So what are these organisms which will help in the breakdown of bigger organic particles into simpler particles? So let us look at some of the examples. So one such example of a detritivore is an earthworm. Now you would have heard, even if you have not heard, you should know that earthworm is often called as farmer's friend. Why is it called farmer's friend? You know, that's because the cast of earthworms, they enrich the quality of the soil. So they improve the soil quality. So for farmers, what is important? Good growth of plants, they want good crop yield, good productivity, and that all is possible only when you have good soil quality, because soil quality plays an important role in crop productivity. So these earthworms help in improving the quality of the soil, and that is why they are called as farmers' friends. So therefore earthworm is also referred to as a natural fertilizer. So what does it exactly do? It helps in the breakdown of dead plant or animal remains. So that is how it gets a lot of nutrients which was present in that plant or animal body into the soil, and that is how the soil also gets enriched. So that's what basically an earthworm does, and due to its job it also falls under the category of detritivores. So you should always remember that whenever you, let us say you are roaming around somewhere and you suddenly see an earthworm, so please do not step over the earthworm and kill it, because it does an excellent job for all of us. It improves the soil quality, so it increases the crop productivity, and directly or indirectly we all are dependent on that. So whenever you see an earthworm, just look and think, pick it up and bring it back home. And which is the home of an earthworm? It is nothing but the soil. So bring it back to the soil so that it can do its job peacefully. So this is the first step of decomposition, where detritivores will break down the detritus into simpler particles. Since it breaks it down into simpler particles or simpler fragments, it is called fragmentation. Let us look at the next step, that is leaching. So what do we mean by leaching? Let's see that. So in this step, it dissolves out the soluble constituents from the detritus. So what happens is, the detritus, it is an organic matter in the complex form. So in the first step, what we did, we just broke it down into simpler particles. So now what is done is, the water soluble particles are looked upon. So wherever you have soluble constituents, they are dissolved out of the detritus. So that is how the soluble nutrients will go down the soil horizon. So let us suppose This is your soil horizon. So I hope all of you know what is soil horizon. The various layers of soil. So in soil also you have different layers. So all these layers together form the soil horizon. So let us suppose these are the topmost layer, then you have the middle layer, then you have the lower layers. So that means you have different layers of soil. So now the plants interact mostly with the upper layers of soil. So what happens is the soluble constituents will start going down. So as you can see, this arrow, this denotes that the soluble constituents are actually going down deep into the soil horizon. Now how will it go down? I mean, what will make the soluble nutrients go down? So this can occur due to rain or irrigation. So what happens during irrigation? Irrigation means watering the fields. So when watering is done, what happens? There is a lot of water on the soil. Now as the water goes down through the porous soil particles, so along with the water, the soluble constituents from the detritus will also go down the soil horizon. So are you able to understand it? So when we irrigate the field, when we provide water to the field, so water is here, but the soil particles are porous. So the water will pass down deep into the soil through these soil particles. Now all those constituents of the detritus which are water soluble, they will get dissolved in that water and they will also start moving deep down into the soil horizon. So this movement of dissolved substances with water percolating through the soil, so this entire process is known as leaching. So this is what happens in leaching. So basically in the first step you broke down the complex organic substance into simpler forms. In the next step you snatched out all the water soluble constituents from the detritus. So the soluble nutrients precipitate as unavailable salts. So this is how the soluble nutrients actually they vanish off of the detritus. So this was the second step. So let us look what happens in the third step, that is catabolism. Now what do we mean by catabolism? Now we have heard about something called metabolism. What is metabolism? All the processes which take place inside the body, they are all together called metabolic activities or metabolism. So metabolism has two things within itself, anabolism and catabolism. So ana would always mean formation, whereas kata would always mean deformation, that is breaking down. So let us see what is happening here in catabolism. So here enzymes from decomposers. So now in this step, the decomposers are involved. Like from the definition of decomposition, we often think that okay, decomposition is something which only involves decomposers. So there are nobody else involved. But if you actually look at the process stepwise, the first two steps, decomposers did not play any role. So it is only when it reaches the third step, there comes the decomposers, that is bacteria and fungi. So what do? They further break down the detritus into simpler forms. So the first level of breaking down was done by the detritivores, that is earthworm. Now the second level of breakdown after water has been removed out of it is done by the decomposers. So this bacteria and fungi, they come into role and they play a major role in the process of decomposition. So here what happens, the complex substances are getting broken down into simpler forms. So it is like a conversion of complex to simple. So that is what is being depicted by this picture. And finally, the fourth step, which is humification. So humification, the name is derived from humus. You would have heard about humus. Humus is that substance which increases the fertility of the soil. So we always want soil to be rich in humus so that it can be more fertile, so that the crop productivity can be more out of it. So humification is derived from humus. So let us see what happens in this step. So this step of decomposition occurs in the soil. So inside the soil, this entire process will take place. So let us see what happens. So humus formation takes place in this step. Now, in the first step, what happened? The dead plant or animal remains were broken down into relatively simpler forms in the sense into smaller sized particles. So that was fragmentation. In the next step, water soluble constituents were taken out by the process of leaching. In third step, those simpler particles, simpler in the sense the smaller pieces of particles, were further broken down so that they can be converted from complex to simplest form. So now they are all present in this simpler form, and they are all present inside the soil. Now inside the soil, from those simplest form of particles, humus formation will take place. So now eventually by the end of this step, what will happen? Your detritus will no more be there. They will vanish off. Instead, what will be present? Only humus will be present, which increases the fertility of the soil. So that's how the overall process is going to take place. So let us see how this will happen. Now before that, what is humus? Humus is brown or black organic matter that provides nutrients to the plants, and that is why it is said to improve the fertility of the soil. So nature-wise, humus is amorphous in nature. What do we mean by amorphous? Now there are two types of substances based upon its internal structure or internal form. One is crystalline and the other one is amorphous. So crystalline are those substances which exist in the form of crystals, where you can distinguish each particle from other. For example, say sugar. So if you look at sugar, you can actually see the crystals of sugar. So we can say that sugar is crystalline in nature. Whereas anything like say soil, where you do not actually distinguish each particle from other, so they are called amorphous. So humus is also amorphous in nature. It increases the water retaining capacity of the soil. Water retaining capacity is nothing but the capacity to hold enough water. Now why is that important for the soil? Because plants, for plant growth and development, water is extremely important, and plant gets water through their roots from the soil. So soil should have sufficient water to provide it to the plants. So these humus will help the soil to increase its water holding capacity. So humus basically influences the bulk density of soil, and it also contributes to moisture. Now, therefore, we can see that in the process of humification, humus formation will take place from the simplest form, which was formed by the decomposers. And now the final step. In fact, these both are together, formation of humus and mineralization. So from the name itself, you can guess what it is. Mineralization is nothing but formation of minerals. So basically in the last step, what's happening is that from the simplest form, which was formed by the decomposers, from there mineral formation, humus formation is taking place, and all these are important for plant growth. So the dead remains are getting converted into something which is useful for the plants. So release of minerals or inorganic nutrients by further degradation of humus by microorganisms is called mineralization. So in short, you can say formation of minerals. Now what are minerals? Minerals could be any inorganic constituents. For example, if you talk about minerals, there can be macronutrients or micronutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur. So these are all examples of minerals. Even there can be inorganic products. So some of the inorganic gases like CO2, like water, so all these are also inorganic products. But when we talk about minerals, we mainly talk about all these: nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, potassium. So all these fall under the category of minerals. Some of them are required in large amounts and therefore called macronutrients, whereas some of these are required by the plant in smaller amounts and hence called micronutrients. So all these formation will take place in this final step of mineralization. And how this takes place? This also takes place by further degradation of humus by microorganisms. So basically the microorganisms like bacteria or fungi, they play an important role in catabolism as well as in humification and mineralization. So they constantly keep on breaking down, further breaking down the substances so that they can give rise to the inorganic nutrients. So if you look at it, if you look at the entire process of decomposition, we started with organic complex matter, which was in the form of dead plant or animal remains. So from that organic complex matter, you finally reached to inorganic nutrients in the form of minerals. So this is how the entire process of decomposition takes place. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more educational videos with a better experience. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest updates. Thank you once again.